My Dying Bride 2. Chapter 1. The Alchemist's Secret. The house was still. Only the whisper of rain against the windows answered Brent's sobs. Clara lay in her bed, shrouded in silk, her face pale as ivory, her lips a withered rose. He had kissed them until they were cold, held her until stiffness claimed her limbs, and when the servants dared approach, he drove them away like intruders. Now she rested beneath a veil of waxen candles, and Brent knelt beside her as if before an altar, murmuring prayers no priest had ever taught. He had failed her. The last tincture had done nothing but scorch her veins, speeding the rot rather than mending it. Her breath had stuttered, her eyes had rolled white, and though he pressed his ear to her chest, begging for a heartbeat, none came. Brent did not eat, nor sleep. He simply waited for the candles to gut her out, for the night to devour her memory. But he was not alone. The door creaked sometime after midnight. Brent lifted his head, ready to curse whatever servant dared intrude. But the figure that entered was not one of his own. The alchemist. His cloak was wet from the storm, his beard gleamed with rain, and his eyes glowed like embers. He said nothing at first, only gazed upon Clara's body with a hunger that turned Brent's stomach. "You?" Brent staggered to his feet, fists clenched. "You did this. Your poisons killed her." The alchemist raised a skeletal hand. "No, Brent. Death killed her. Decay killed her. I merely slowed the inevitable. Would you rather she had perished weeks ago? Unkissed? Unheld?" Brent faltered, grief blunting his fury. The alchemist stepped closer, circling the bed. "And yet," he murmured, "the thread is not fully severed. Her body is fresh. Her soul lingers like mist over a graveyard. If you will it, I can draw her back." Brent's heart lurched. His lips parted, but he forced them closed again. He dared not believe. You mean resurrection?" he whispered. The alchemist smiled thinly. "I mean reclamation. Death is not an end, but a doorway. With the proper key, I can coax her through again." Brent shuddered. At what cost? The alchemist's silence was the only answer he received. The ritual began in secret. The servants had been dismissed with tales of exhaustion and grief. Only Brent, trembling, and the alchemist, calm as stone, remained in the chamber. Clara's body was bared to the waist, her skin marble pale beneath the candlelight. The alchemist set his satchel upon the bed and withdrew his instruments. A vial of crimson liquid darker than blood, a knife thin as a quill, and a blackened book bound in some hide that twitched faintly at his touch. Brent hovered near, half dreading, half praying. "Stand back," the alchemist commanded. He opened Clara's lips with careful fingers and poured a draught of the crimson fluid into her mouth. Some dribbled across her chin, streaking her neck like wine spilled on alabaster. Then he began to chant. The words were thick, broken, and Brent felt his ears ache to hear them. The candle flames bent toward the bed as if dragged by invisible breath. Clara's chest rose faintly, though Brent could not tell if it was his desperate eyes deceiving him. The alchemist drew the knife across his palm and let his blood spill onto her lips. Her tongue twitched, her throat convulsed. Brent staggered forward. She moved. "Silence," hissed the alchemist, not breaking his rhythm. He carved symbols into the air, and the shadows writhed like serpents. The crimson drink bubbled at the corners of Clara's mouth, but she swallowed, a faint moan escaping her throat. Her eyes snapped open. Brent cried out, falling to his knees. Clara's gaze was cloudy, milky as a drowned corpse's, but she was looking. Her lips trembled, and a sound escaped, half whisper, half rattle. "Elias." He reached for her, tears streaming down his face. "I'm here, my love. I'm here." But the alchemist blocked him with an outstretched arm. "Not yet. She is raw. If you touch her, the tether may break." Brent could scarcely restrain himself, but fear held him. He watched as Clara shifted, her fingers curling, her chest rising with a halting breath. Her lips darkened, not with warmth, but with a strange bruised bloom. She was alive. Alive. The alchemist bent low, whispering into her ear words Brent could not hear. Clara stilled, then slowly turned her face toward him, and for the first time since death, she smiled. Not at Brent. At the alchemist. Clara, Brent begged. Look at me, your husband, your love. Her eyes flickered, briefly softening, but then glazed again. Her lips parted, and when she spoke, it was not in her voice alone. Something deeper, something borrowed, echoed beneath it. I am returned. Brent reached for her hand, and this time the alchemist did not stop him. He grasped it, sobbing with joy, but recoiled almost instantly. Her flesh was warm, too warm, fever-hot, pulsing with an alien rhythm that did not feel like life. The alchemist's smile widened. She is yours, Brent. Yours to kiss, yours to hold, yours to mourn again, should you falter. But never forget. His gaze burned into Brent's soul. She is also mine. Chapter 2: The Hollow Union. The storm had broken by dawn, leaving the manor wrapped in a pall of fog. Brent had not slept. He could not take his eyes off Clara, who sat upright in her bed like a queen on a pale throne. She breathed, she blinked, she moved. Yet not once had her gaze returned to him fully. The alchemist lingered in the shadows, silent as a spider, watching her every flicker of movement. Clara, Brent whispered, approaching with trembling hands. Do you know me? Do you remember? Her eyes, milk-clouded yet strangely radiant, shifted toward him. For a heartbeat, something of the woman he loved sparked within them, a faint memory of tenderness. Her lips moved as if to speak his name. Then the alchemist stepped forward. Clara's eyes immediately brightened. She leaned toward him, shoulders curving like a flower toward the sun. Brent froze. My dear, the alchemist murmured, voice dripping with possession. How do you feel? Her lips curved into a faint, childlike smile. Cold, yet burning. Brent's heart cracked. That smile, once his alone, now blossomed at another man's words. As the days passed, Clara grew stronger. Her hair regained its luster, though it shone with an unnatural sheen. Her skin softened, but beneath its surface Brent could feel a feverish pulse, as though something else lived there. She no longer clung to Brent. Instead, she watched the alchemist with reverence, her gaze never straying far from him. When he entered a room, her breath quickened. When he spoke, she listened with parted lips, as if each syllable nourished her. Brent raged against it. She is my wife, he hissed one evening, dragging the alchemist aside while Clara wandered the garden like a sleepwalker. You've bewitched her, filled her with your poisons. She belongs to me. The alchemist's smile was venomous. No, Brent, she belonged to you. What lies in that body now is mine. You begged me for her return. You opened the door, and I stepped through. Did you truly think I labored for your sake? Brent's breath faltered. You wanted her all along. The alchemist's eyes gleamed. Even death desired her. Why should I not? That night Brent crept into Clara's chamber, desperate to reclaim what remained of her. He knelt by her bedside, grasping her hands. My love, he whispered. Do you not remember our vows? Do you not remember the nights beneath the roses, the mornings by the lake? Clara, it's me, Brent. Her expression flickered, fragile, as though struggling through mist. For a moment, her lips parted, and she leaned toward him. Brent's heart soared, until she shuddered violently and pulled away, clutching her head as if in agony. From the doorway, the alchemist appeared. His presence steadied her. She turned to him like a lost child finding its parent. Make it stop, she pleaded, her voice breaking. The shadows, the voices. The alchemist brushed her cheek, his touch lingering with obscene tenderness. Hush, my sweet, they are but echoes of the grave. I will teach you how to silence them. Clara stilled beneath his hand, breathing softly, her fear melting into trust. And Brent, watching, felt as though a knife had been driven through his soul. Days bled into nights. Clara no longer sought Brent's company. She lingered by the alchemist's side, following him into the cellar where strange herbs smoked and blackened glass vials lined the shelves. Brent overheard their whispers, her voice eager, his instructive. One evening, Brent found her writing symbols upon her own skin, her hand guided by the alchemist's. They glowed faintly before fading, leaving her trembling but exhilarated. "What is this madness?" Brent cried, seizing her arm. She yanked free with surprising strength, her eyes blazing with something alien. "Do not touch me without leave, Brent." He staggered back as if struck. Clara had never spoken so coldly. The alchemist, smiling, placed a hand on her shoulder. "You see, Brent? She is no longer yours to command. She awakens to her true self. Soon she will be more than bride, more than woman. She will be eternal." Brent's blood turned to ice. One night he awoke to the sound of Clara's footsteps. She wandered the hallways, pale nightdress trailing, whispering words he could not understand. The alchemist walked beside her, murmuring in the same unholy tongue. From the shadows, Brent watched as she pressed her hand to the wall, leaving behind a blackened mark that smoked before fading. Her eyes shone with fever-bright devotion. When she faltered, he caught her gently, holding her against him like a lover. She clutched his chest, her lips brushing his ear as she whispered something that made him laugh. A low, triumphant laugh. Brent's stomach churned. The sound was not merely her voice. It was hers and his, twined together like a prayer and its answer. Brent tried once more, desperate. He cornered Clara in the garden as dawn broke, the roses drooping with dew. "Clara," he begged, falling to his knees before her. "Look at me. Remember me. I am the man who loves you. He does not love you, he uses you. Please, come back to me." Clara regarded him with unreadable eyes. For a long moment, silence hung heavy between them. Then she leaned down, cupping his cheek. For a heartbeat, her touch was tender, familiar. Brent wept. "Yes, yes, my love." But her lips curved into a smile he had never seen before. Sharp, cruel, exultant. "I have come back, Brent," she whispered, her breath hot against his ear. "But not for you." Behind her, the alchemist emerged from the fog. Clara turned to him, taking his hand with reverence, and together they walked into the shadows, leaving Brent kneeling in the damp earth, shattered. Chapter 3: The Unholy Vows. The manor had become a cathedral of whispers. Strange sigils bloomed across the walls, etched in soot and blood, glowing faintly in the dark. The air reeked of burnt herbs, metallic and sweet, seeping into Brent's lungs until every breath tasted of poison. He had not slept in days. Shadows lengthened around him, curling into shapes that mocked his despair. Clara no longer shared a bed, nor even a room. She belonged wholly to the alchemist now, and Brent, her husband, was left a stranger in his own home. One evening, he stumbled upon them in the grand hall. The furniture had been cleared, the windows shrouded in black cloth. Candles burned in a wide circle upon the floor, their flames bending inward as if drawn to an unseen heart. Clara stood at the center, dressed in a gown Brent did not recognize, woven of crimson silk that shimmered like fresh blood. Her hair, once dulled by death, now cascaded in waves of midnight gloss. Her skin glowed with an eerie luminescence, pale yet radiant, and her lips curved into a smile of cruel serenity. At her side stood the alchemist, robed in black, his eyes burning with triumph. He held a book bound in human hide, its pages trembling with each syllable he spoke. "Tonight," he proclaimed, "we bind what death sought to sever, flesh and spirit made whole, bride and master, joined beyond decay." Brent staggered forward, trembling. "No, she is my wife. Clara, do you not hear him? He twists you, enslaves you." Her eyes flicked toward him. For the briefest instant they softened. A shadow of memory trembled there, of roses, of laughter, of nights spent entwined in fragile bliss. Brent's heart leapt. But then the alchemist placed a hand upon her shoulder, and the softness vanished. Her gaze hardened into devotion, her body leaning toward him as if drawn by unseen gravity. "You are nothing, Brent," she whispered, her voice both tender and cruel. "I belong where power dwells, and he is power." The ritual began. The alchemist drew a blade of silver, its edge blackened with centuries of use. He nicked Clara's palm, and from the wound spilled not blood, but a thick ichor the color of wine. She held her hand aloft, letting it drip into the circle of flame. The candles flared, their light staining the walls with shapes that writhed and pulsed. Brent saw faces in the shadows, faces of the dead, perhaps, or the unborn. They wept, they laughed, they screamed silently. The alchemist cut his own palm, pressing it to Clara's. Flesh met flesh, ichor mingling with blood. Their veins burned with light, spreading up their arms in blackened vines. "By earth and rot," he intoned. "By flame and bone," she answered. "By hunger unending," he swore. "By thirst eternal," she vowed. Brent covered his ears, unable to bear the sound of their voices weaving together, chanting words older than stone. His stomach heaved, his heart convulsed with helpless rage. "Stop this," he screamed. "Clara, you are mine. We were bound by God, by love, by weakness," she cut in, her voice ringing through the hall like a bell of doom. "Love is chains, but this is freedom." The circle roared with power. Flames rose higher, bending inward until they kissed Clara's skin without burning. She threw back her head, laughing. A sound Brent had once adored, now twisted into something alien. The alchemist drew her close, his lips brushing hers. It was no mere kiss but a sealing of covenants, a union written in blood and shadow. Her body convulsed, then steadied, her form seeming to glow brighter, more perfect, more terrible. Her eyes opened wide, no longer human. In their depths burned a hunger that mirrored the alchemist's own. The ritual ended. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Clara turned, her crimson gown flowing like liquid flame. She looked upon Brent, kneeling beyond the circle, broken. Once she would have run to him. Once she would have soothed his wounds with her touch. But now she regarded him with the pity one reserves for a stray dog. "Brent," she murmured, her voice soft yet cutting. "You brought me back. You carried me to him. Without you, I would still lie rotting in the earth. For that, I am grateful." Tears blurred his vision. "Then choose me. Please, Clara, choose me." She smiled, not cruelly, but with a terrible serenity. "I have chosen my love, and I did not choose you." She turned back to the alchemist, her hand sliding into his. Together, they stepped across the threshold of the circle. The shadows followed them, writhing like a bridal train. Brent collapsed, his sobs echoing through the empty hall. Later, in the silence of his study, Brent stared at the remnants of his shattered world. Clara's laughter still rang in the corridors, mingled with the alchemist's low voice. Their whispers twined like serpents, filling the air he breathed. He stared into the fire, mind unraveling. "She was mine," he muttered. "She was mine first. He cannot have her. He cannot." The flames flickered, taking shape. Clara's face, serene and radiant, smiling at another man. Brent's hand trembled toward the poker by the hearth. If he could not reclaim her love, he would reclaim her death. Chapter 4: Ashes of the Husband. The manor had grown colder, not from the wind that pressed against the shutters, nor from the rain that slipped through cracks in the roof, but from something deeper, an emptiness in the walls, as though the house itself mourned what had been torn from it. Brent sat in his study, the fire guttering low. His frame had withered in the weeks since Clara's second awakening. His hair hung limp, his cheeks hollowed, his eyes sunken like caverns where no light dared tread. He had once been a scholar, a man of reason, but reason had abandoned him the night she spoke the words. "I did not choose you." He turned the poker in the flames, watching sparks scatter like broken stars. His hand trembled, not with weakness alone, but with rage, with a gnawing hunger for restitution. On the desk before him lay pages upon pages of notes, scrawled in ink and in blood where ink had run dry. Plans, maps of the manor's corridors, sketches of the alchemist's sigils, lists of ingredients stolen from the cellar where the intruder kept his filters and powders. Some were recipes for poisons, others for charms Brent half remembered from old tomes, fragments of folklore he had once dismissed as nonsense. Now he read them with the devotion of a priest. He muttered as he wrote, "If he bleeds, he may yet die. If she drinks from him, perhaps I can sever the tether." Sever? Yes, sever. His words trailed into laughter, thin and cracked, echoing against the shelves. Days blurred into nights, nights into days. Brent seldom slept, and when he did, he dreamed. Always the same. Clara in her crimson gown, her hand in another's, her lips upon another's mouth. She looked at him across a gulf of shadows, her smile the smile of a queen who no longer remembered her servant. He awoke each time in sweat, clutching at the bed where once she lay. The sheets were cold, stiff with the memory of her rot, her perfume replaced by the metallic tang of alchemical fumes that seeped into every chamber. At meals he ate little. Bread went stale upon his plate. Meat rotted before he touched it. Instead he sipped black wine, bitter and heavy, and told himself it gave him strength. He began to talk aloud to Clara, not the Clara who walked with the alchemist now, but the Clara he had buried, the Clara who once laughed by candlelight, who pressed her cheek against his chest, who whispered her devotion into his ear. "You are still mine," he said into the empty chair across the table. "They think you belong to him, but no, your heart beats for me. I hear it even now. You are my bride, my dying bride." He raised his cup to the void and drank. In his waking hours, Brent grew bold. He spied upon them, though terror clenched his heart each time he neared the grand hall where they performed their rites. From the cracks in the door he saw them together. Clara reading from the alchemist's book, her pale fingers stroking the vellum with reverence. The alchemist's hand upon hers, guiding her. The way she gazed at him, eyes alight with hunger Brent had never drawn from her. Sometimes he saw worse, her laughter as she kissed her new master, her arms encircling him. Her lips red not from rouge but from the blood they drank together. Brent bit his fist until it bled, stifling his screams. Yet he watched and he learned. He memorized the movements of their rituals, the substances they consumed, the manner in which the candles flickered when certain names were spoken. He began to mimic the words in secret, though his tongue faltered and the air grew heavy when he did. One night, in desperation, he drew a circle of ash upon the floor of his study, whispering the syllables he had overheard. The candles bent just as they did for the alchemist. A tremor passed through the room. The shadows deepened. And from those shadows, for a moment, he thought he saw Clara as she once was. Her cheeks warm, her lips parted in a tender smile. He reached out, but the vision dissolved, leaving only smoke. "Soon," he whispered, tears streaking down his face. "Soon I shall free you from him." The decline was not merely of the mind, but of the body. Brent's hands shook constantly. His reflection in the mirror startled him. The gaunt face, the fever-bright eyes, the stains upon his collar. He had ceased to wash, to comb his hair, to shave. What did it matter, when he was alone in the ruins of a marriage, abandoned to the mercy of a sorcerer? He began to mark the days on the wall with a knife. Each scratch echoed through the chamber like a wound carved into the bones of the house. The servants had long since fled. They spoke of voices in the halls, of footsteps that echoed where none walked, of a woman singing lullabies in the dead of night. Brent had not stopped them. Better their absence than their gossip. He alone remained, the last guardian of the house he no longer owned. Weeks passed. His plans grew darker, more intricate. In a locked drawer he collected vials, arsenic, mercury, nightshade brewed into bitter draughts. He told himself he needed weapons, tools. He sharpened knives, though his hands trembled so badly that once he sliced his palm. He licked the wound, tasting copper, and felt a strange thrill. In the chapel, long abandoned, He knelt before the altar and prayed, not to God, who had forsaken him, but to any who would listen. "Grant me vengeance," he begged. "Grant me the strength to sever their union, to bring her back to me. I will give my soul, my blood, my breath." His prayer was answered only by silence. Yet he rose, convinced the silence itself was an omen. The hallucinations worsened. At night, when the storm winds howled, he heard Clara's voice singing in the corridors, sometimes gentle, sometimes mocking. He followed it, lantern in hand, chasing her song through twisting stairwells and shuttered rooms. Always it led him to the locked doors of the hall where she now slept with the alchemist. There he would press his ear against the wood, listening. Moans, laughter, chants in a language he did not know. He bit his lips until blood stained his chin. By day he thought he saw her in mirrors, sometimes the Clara he had loved, sometimes the Clara she had become. The latter smiled cruelly, whispering, "Why do you not end yourself, Brent?" The former begged him, "Save me." He no longer trusted his own senses. Still he plotted. In his journal, written in a hand that grew more jagged with each page, he outlined their destruction. Strike when the alchemist is weakest after ritual. Poison his drafts. Mercury, yes. Sever Clara's tie. Blood binding must be undone. Find counterspell. If cannot sever, then kill both. He stared at the final line for hours. His hand hovered, then scrawled beneath, "Better her dead in truth than living in his shadow." The words broke him. He fell to the floor, clutching the journal to his chest, sobbing. "Forgive me, Clara," he whispered. "If I cannot free you, then I must free the earth of you." The days that followed saw Brent prowling the halls like a beast. He seldom spoke save to himself. He skulked in shadows, watching the alchemist's movements, memorizing the times he left Clara's side. He discovered at last a pattern. Every seventh night, the alchemist retired alone to the cellar beneath the chapel, carrying with him a chest of vials. Clara remained in her chamber above, guarded only by the shadows. Brent smiled for the first time in months. His teeth were yellowed, his lips cracked, but the smile burned with purpose. That night, in the solitude of his study, he raised a knife and pressed it to his palm. Blood welled, dripping onto the floorboards. "I swear it," he hissed. "By this blood, I will end him. By this blood, I will reclaim you." The candles flickered as though in answer. The shadows bent toward him, whispering. He could not make out their words, but he felt them coil around his heart, feeding his resolve. He laughed, a hollow, mad sound, for Brent had ceased to be merely a grieving husband. He had become something else entirely, a revenant of his own sorrow, a man remade by hatred, bound to a vow darker than the one he had once spoken before God. Thus his plotting reached its zenith. He sharpened the blade. He brewed the draft. He whispered his oaths into the night until the walls themselves seemed to echo them back. The house waited, holding its breath. And Brent, gaunt and trembling, waited with it, poised upon the brink of damnation. Chapter 5: The Bride's Secret. The night Brent chose to act, a strange calm settled over the manor. He moved through the halls with knife in hand, every creak of the floorboards echoing like a drum of war. The plan was simple. Strike when the alchemist descended into the cellar, then free Clara, carry her away, and, if she resisted, force her to remember what she once was. But when he reached Clara's chamber, he found the door unlocked. No sigils burned upon the wood. No guard of shadow waited. The air smelled faintly of roses, her roses, the scent she had always worn. Brent pushed the door open. She was waiting. Clara sat upon the edge of the bed, her skin pale as ivory, her gown flowing like crimson water around her. She turned her head toward him slowly, lips parting in a smile that was neither warm nor cruel but knowing. "You came," she said softly. Brent faltered, the knife trembling in his grip. "Clara, you are alone. Where is he?" "In the cellar, as you thought. He trusts me now." She tilted her head. "You thought to strike him tonight, didn't you?" The words struck him like a lash. How did you know? She rose, moving toward him with a grace that made his heart ache. Her eyes gleamed in the candlelight, not with the old tenderness, but with an ancient fire. Because, Brent, this has been my design from the beginning. He staggered back, his knife clattering to the floor. What are you saying? Clara's smile widened. Do you remember the first time I coughed blood into my handkerchief? How I wept, how I clutched at you in terror. That was no sudden malady. I had known for months before. The sickness was already within me, eating me day by day. But you were so eager to save me, so desperate. I let you believe it was new, a shadow that had only just fallen. And I knew you would do anything. Brent's knees buckled. You lied. All those nights I held you, believing time was against us. Time was always against me, she said, her tone sharp as glass. But I would not submit to the grave. I sought a way beyond it. And you, my sweet, devoted husband, you led me straight to it. To him. Her eyes flickered toward the floor, as though to the depths where the alchemist worked even now. Brent pressed a shaking hand to his face. No, no, Clara, you cannot mean. She stepped closer, her cold fingers brushing his cheek. I mean that every tear, every sigh, every plea I gave you was a thread in the tapestry I wove. You thought yourself my savior, but you were my key. Without your desperation, I would never have opened the door to his art. Without your sorrow, I would never have bound myself to him. I used you, Brent, as surely as the alchemist uses me. The words carved into him deeper than any knife. He shook his head, whispering, You loved me. You swore it. Her hand lingered on his face, tender, almost pitying. I did, once. But love withers, Brent. The body rots, the heart falters. Immortality, that does not wither. That does not falter. She drew back, her voice softening to a confession. I feared death more than I loved you. The silence that followed was unbearable. Brent felt as though the very marrow of his bones had turned to ice. His entire struggle, every prayer, every night of weeping, every desperate plan, had been for a woman who had chosen her fate long before he ever dreamed of saving her. He looked at her then, not at the pallid skin or the bloodless lips, but at the hunger that burned in her gaze. A hunger that had nothing to do with love, and everything to do with eternity. You knew, he croaked. All along, you knew I would damn myself for you. Yes, she whispered. And you let me believe, his voice broke, that I could still save you. Clara leaned close, her breath cool against his ear. You did save me, Brent, just not in the way you hoped. Rage boiled within him, so sudden it blinded him. He snatched the knife from the floor, pressing its point against her breast. She did not flinch. Kill me then, she murmured, her eyes steady. But know that if you strike, you end more than my body. You end the only chance you ever had to hold me again. The alchemist will raise me once more, and I will belong to him utterly. Strike, and you lose me forever. His hand shook violently. Tears streamed down his face. Clara's smile deepened. Then let me go. The knife fell from his hand. He collapsed to his knees before her, sobbing into the folds of her gown. She stroked his hair with the gentleness of old, though her words were knives. Poor Brent, she whispered, so devoted, so blind. You were the perfect vessel for my design. He clutched at her skirt like a drowning man, crying, Why, Clara? Why not tell me? Why not let me share in the truth? Because you would have tried to stop me, she answered simply. You would have begged me to die as a mortal, and I could not bear such weakness. Her hand tightened in his hair, pulling his head back so that his eyes met hers. The fire in them burned brighter now, cruel and eternal. I chose eternity, she said, and I chose it without you. Something within Brent broke. He saw at last the truth, not the illusion of a wife stolen by a sorcerer, not the dream of a love corrupted by another's hand, but the reality of a woman who had bartered her soul long before he understood her suffering. The Clara he loved had died the moment she chose immortality over him. The creature before him was not his wife, but his betrayer. And yet he loved her still. He wept at her feet, torn between devotion and loathing, between the memory of her laughter and the horror of her confession. Above them the storm gathered. Thunder shook the house, lightning split the sky, as though the heavens themselves bore witness to the death of a husband's hope. When at last Clara stepped away, Brent remained kneeling, broken, staring at the knife he could not bring himself to wield. She turned toward the door, her voice calm, final. "Stay if you wish, Brent. Scheme, plot, waste away. But know this, I was never yours to save. I was only ever my own." And with that, she was gone, her footsteps vanishing into the dark corridors of the manor, leaving Brent to his grief, his fury, and the ashes of his devotion. Chapter 6: The Crimson Ascension. The storm had not left the sky for 3 days. The manor groaned beneath the lash of wind and rain, its windows shuddering, its ancient timbers creaking as though protesting the sins committed within. In the cellar, Brent had not slept, had not eaten. He stood among the alchemist's apparatus, vials of rotting herbs, flasks of blood that never clotted, bones polished white by hands that cherished them. His hands trembled as he turned the pages of a forbidden tome he had stolen from the alchemist's chest. Its words were jagged as wounds, its diagrams dripping with obscenity. Yet as his eyes devoured each line, clarity bloomed in his madness. The alchemist had not discovered immortality through transmutation alone. His secret lay in blood, the binding of life to life, the theft of vitality from flesh into flesh. Alchemy was but the mask. The truth was vampirism. And Brent, shattered and betrayed, hungered for it. Clara came to him at dusk. She no longer knocked, no longer hesitated to enter where once she had feared to tread. Her gown was dark, her hair unbound, her lips pale as pearls. She moved like a queen through a court of shadows. "You look ill, my love," she said softly, her voice dripping with mock tenderness. "Have you been feeding yourself at all?" Brent looked up from the tome, his eyes hollow yet burning. "Feeding," he murmured. "Yes, I've learned much of feeding." Clara's gaze flicked to the book, and for a moment, something like unease shadowed her face. But then she smiled, the way one does when indulging a child's tantrum. "You cannot master what you read there," she said. "That path is not yours. It was never meant for you." Brent rose, his frame gaunt but unbowed. "Not meant for me? And yet you would drink eternal life while I rotted beside you. No, Clara. If you would forsake me, then I will carve my eternity from the same flesh you did." She laughed then, but there was no joy in it, only disbelief. "You could never. The ritual would consume you. Better consumed than abandoned." His voice cracked like thunder in the chamber. That night, Brent watched from the shadows as the alchemist prepared another draft for Clara. The sorcerer worked with his usual calm precision, his hands steady even as storms battered the world above. He hummed as he poured blood into glass, ground marrow to powder, and whispered invocations that made the walls tremble. Brent's heart hammered with hatred. This man had taken Clara from him, or so he had once believed. But now Brent saw the truth. The alchemist had merely been her accomplice, her midwife into eternity. Yet still Brent hated him for his smugness, his confidence, his hands upon what Brent once called his own. When the draft was complete and Clara lifted it to her lips, Brent struck. He emerged from the shadows with the fury of a beast, hurling himself upon the alchemist. The two men crashed against the table, shattering glass, sending blood spattering across the floor in dark rivers. The alchemist snarled, strength belying his age, and struck Brent across the face, splitting his lip. "Fool!" the sorcerer roared. "Do you know what you meddle with?" "Yes," Brent hissed, seizing a shard of glass and plunging it into the alchemist's side. "I meddle with what you stole, with what was mine." The sorcerer howled, the wound gushing black blood, but he did not fall. His hands conjured fire, searing Brent's arm, the smell of cooked flesh filling the chamber. Still Brent pressed on, blind with pain and hatred. He bit into the alchemist's wrist with a ferocity that startled even himself, tearing flesh, drinking the hot, metallic flood that spilled into his mouth. The taste was lightning. It surged through him like a second heartbeat, igniting every nerve, every vein. His vision sharpened until he could see each bead of sweat on the alchemist's brow. His muscles burned, then strengthened, the fire in his arm numbed to a dull ember. The alchemist shrieked, realizing too late what Brent had done. Clara dropped the goblet, her eyes wide as she watched her husband drink like an animal. "Brent!" she cried. "Stop! You don't know what you're taking into yourself." But Brent could not stop. He drank until the sorcerer's struggles weakened, until his body sagged against him, until the fire in the man's veins became his own. Only when the alchemist collapsed, empty and still, did Brent lift his head, blood dripping from his chin, eyes glowing with new and terrible light. He turned to Clara, smiling with crimson teeth. "You were wrong," he whispered. "The path was meant for me all along." Clara stumbled back, fear flashing in her gaze for the first time. "Brent, what have you done?" "What you would not let me do," he answered. "What you denied me. You wanted eternity without me. But now you have no choice." He lunged at her, faster than her mortal eyes could follow. His hand clamped around her throat, his lips brushing her ear. "You belong to me, Clara. Love or not, devotion or betrayal, it matters nothing now. You are mine." She gasped, struggling, but his strength was unbreakable. He bit deep into her neck, drinking the blood that once he had kissed in tenderness. She writhed, clawed at him, then weakened as her life poured into his mouth. But he did not drain her fully. He pulled back before death could claim her, his own blood burning in his veins. He tore his wrist with his teeth and pressed it to her lips. "Drink," he commanded. At first she resisted, turning her head aside. But the scent, the taste, it drew her despite herself. She drank, her eyes rolling back, her body shuddering as Brent's tainted blood filled her throat. When he tore away, she collapsed, gasping, her skin pale, her lips red as fresh wounds. She looked up at him with new eyes, eyes that glowed faintly in the candlelight. "What have you done to me?" she whispered. Brent knelt before her, cupping her face in blood-stained hands. "I have freed you. No longer are you his creation. No longer are you your own. You are mine, Clara, forever." She wept, though whether from terror, despair, or secret desire he could not tell. He kissed her tears, tasting the salt, then rose, looking down at the alchemist's lifeless husk. The storm raged above, but within Brent burned a greater storm. He felt the hunger rising already, the thirst that could never be quenched. But he felt power, true power that no mortal love, no fragile marriage, no fleeting vow could grant him. Clara crawled to his side, clutching at his arm, trembling. "Brent, what will become of us?" He smiled, dark and radiant. "We will endure, in blood, in shadow, in eternity. Husband and wife, bound not by vows or faith, but by hunger. We will rule this night, Clara, together or not at all." He drew her into his arms as thunder shattered the sky. Lightning illuminated the cellar, glinting upon their bloodied lips, their pale skin, their eyes burning with unnatural fire. Above them, the world drowned in rain. Below, in the womb of the earth, something new was born. Not husband and wife, not widow and mourner, but two creatures chained by love and loathing alike, bound forever by the crimson covenant of vampirism. Brent held her close, whispering into her hair, "My bride, my dying bride no longer. You are mine beyond death, beyond God, beyond hope. Mine in damnation." And Clara, trembling, whispered back, "Yes,